Hey everyone, it's the 28th of March 2015 and we're going to explore Seattle a little bit today. So you should enjoy this video. Well, for breakfast I got scrambled eggs, toast and a cup of tea, finally. A hotel that actually has tea. It's a rarity. Well, I'm not going up to CN Tower. Basically had an argument with a lady at the will call box. I went there to get my ticket that I've already paid for and she wanted me to queue up again for an hour. So they just take your cash and then they treat you like garbage basically. But anyway, I've got other things to see and do. I will be putting a complaint into their management about her. Anyway, I'm going to enjoy the rest of my day. It's enough complaining for now. There's a lot of interesting glass displays and fabric displays and I think this place is called the Chihuly Garden and Glass Museum. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the first name right or not. And if we look up at the ceiling, you see all these glass, different colours and more colours over there. Oh, sorry. Oh, I'll go through. I'm really glad they allow you to take photos and film in here. Other places I have a real paranoia about it. Well, it's very different to any museum I've been to before. Who would make something like that, really? And we've got all these flowers over here. Green ones and red ones and mauve coloured ones. And I think that's the end of the museum. Whoa, I was actually wrong. There's a lot more of the museum yet. Now we go out into the garden.
I don't know that
You can see a little bit out the window.
Looks like something out of the Willy Wonka movie. The chocolate factory guy. I'm thinking all these Oompa Loompas are going to come out. I wonder what was making that noise. We're going to have a cruise in a little bit. At 1:30, the time is 12:05, so it's not that far away. They recommend we queue up about 12:45, and after that I might go on the Ferris wheel. I might have to find something quick to eat. If I don't get something now, then I have to get something after the cruise, which will be about 3 o'clock or something if I don't get something now. So I got myself a combo, 2 slices of pizza and a Pepsi for it's $7.50, but it was $8.21 after you put the tax on.
We're just preparing here to get underway. I'd like to tell you a little bit about the vessel and the crew on board. First of all, my name's Erin. I'll be your captain. Down at the ramp, getting ready to untie our lines, our deckhand will be Kelly. We've also got Ferguson and September both with us. September is your official bartender. She's located there on the second deck of the vessel. Ferguson's helping her out. Once we get moving, though, Ferguson will be roaming the decks, acting as your cocktail waiter. He's also a tour guide himself, so any questions you may have, don't hesitate to wave him down for any needs at all. He'll help you out the best he can. That leaves us with Andrew, who's going to be your tour guide. He'll be located up here on the third deck of the vessel shortly, pointing out all the sights as we do cruise around the harbor.
All right, so how's everybody doing today? All right, I've got approximately 3 enthusiastic people on this vessel. We gotta change that real quick. We are here, I think it works right there. Gotta remind all of you that you are on a boat here in Seattle. It is still March, and it is an absolutely gorgeous day outside. How are you doing this afternoon? It's much better. I think I might be able to work with that a little bit. Again, my name is Andrew, and I will be your tour guide for the duration of this 8.5-mile loop around Elliott Bay. So my job to you is to be kind of the liaison between the information that is inside my brain and getting that to your eardrums. So hopefully I can make that happen for you. One of the other things that I'm going to be doing as we make this little trip is I'm going to be kind of pointing out some of the nice little kind of picturesque spots you can take those little photos and selfies in front of and all that stuff. So it's kind of my job here. Now, to kind of get you acquainted with the area that you're sitting at right now, this is the central waterfront. So in Seattle's very early history, this is where all the commercial shipping was done. This little area quickly outgrew all of that. The ships kept getting bigger and bigger, so all that's done at the south end of the bay, and we're actually going to see a really good view of all that a little bit later on. What has been happening here very, very recently, as you might have noticed, is there's a lot of construction going on downtown, and this waterfront is pretty much at a standstill at the moment. What's happened back in 2001 is we had a 6.8 earthquake. It was the Nisqually quake, which kind of shifted a lot of things downtown. And the seawall that we had at the time, which was made out of wood, kind of got damaged in that process. So they're taking that wooden one out and replacing it with a concrete seawall. The seawall basically keeps all of this seawater from washing away downtown. So we're doing that, and we're also in the process, over the next few years, we're going to be taking down that double-decker freeway that's just in front of our skyline. That's called the Alaskan Way Viaduct, which is also damaged in that quake. That's going to be coming down, and they're in the process of building a tunnel underneath the city. And they're going to be redirecting all that traffic underneath. That kind of ran into a snafu sometime last year when the tunnel boring machine underneath the city got stuck. And so they're trying to fix that right now. So hopefully, over the next few years, this will start turning into the big showcase waterfront that we're looking forward to here. And you also might have noticed already we had that big giant Ferris wheel there. That one's been sitting here for about 3 years now. Very nice new attraction on the waterfront here. If you ever go and swing by there, you're going to notice that there's one gondola that's completely different from the rest of them, and it's a black encased gondola, which happens to be the VIP one. And so, yes, our Ferris wheel does have a VIP gondola. The special thing about it is the fact that it has a glass floor. So you get to be the only one spinning around in a big giant loop and have the ability to look between your legs at the dock with the water below. So good luck with that. We've got Pier 59, the Seattle Aquarium over here. That's one of the few attractions that is open along the waterfront. If you've never touched a sea anemone or sea cucumber or sea urchin, well, I'm urchining you to get inside there and checking that out. I actually just came out for the first time. I never said that before. Awesome. Anyhow, as we start scooting along here, you're going to be noticing another couple other very familiar things here in Seattle. I'm sure a few of you, at least percentage-wise, have been over to the Pike Place Market. That's going to be that nice yellow mustard-colored building with the green trim on it. There's a nice little walkway coming down from the center of it. Pike Place Market is another thing that's going to be expanding over the next few years here. Because of all the construction that's going on, they thought it was a really great opportunity to start building out this way. So the market is all going to be expanding as well. And so the tens of millions of people that come through here every single year, well, that number I anticipate getting that much bigger. The market itself opened up back in 1907, so that's been going in long and strong for the last 107 years, almost 108 years. The reason that it opened up in the first place was in Seattle's very early history, we had this problem where all these greedy merchants were conspiring together, buying up all the produce and collectively jacking up the prices on it, making it unbearably expensive for people here in Seattle. Now, people got tired of it, got together with local city council and said, hey, gotta do something about this. This is getting a little out of hand. I don't want my onions to cost this much. So they got together with them and said, let's put it in the public market, cut out all those middlemen and allow everybody to meet the producer themselves. And that's definitely a philosophy that still stands today. There's a couple of key spots in there that you can easily miss, because that it's kind of like Hogwarts in there. It kind of goes all over the place in little narrow pathways and so forth. So one special spot in there is going to be known as the gum wall. I'm sure a few of you have already visited that as well. And just as it sounds, there's tens of thousands of pieces of bubble gum, chewing gum, and other sticky things along this little corridor at the market. Probably the second germiest attraction in the world behind possibly the Blarney Stone. But definitely worth a look. A little bit north of that is also where you're going to find the original Starbucks, which opened there at the market in 1971. So it's not the very first Starbucks. That one closed down, but it's the first one that's still around today. So nice little spot there. Directly off to our right, you'll also notice we've got these nice angular roofed buildings, multicolored complex here. This is our very first cruise ship terminal, which we opened up back in 1996. Now, when we opened this up, we didn't really tell a whole lot of people that we were building this cruise ship terminal. We didn't have a whole lot of existing contracts or anything like that. So the very first year that we opened it up, we had less than 6 ships. And for the next several years, we only had a couple ships here and there. It wasn't until 4 years after this opened that we actually started seeing a lot of ships coming through the area. And this was the Norwegian Cruise Line. They had this fantastic idea of heading up to Alaska. They said, hey, coming up from Seattle makes sense. We're very, very close in proximity. It's about 600 miles up to the north of here to get to the southeast. So they can go to Juneau, Ketchikan, Wrangell, all these really nice places, check out the whales, check out the glaciers, all of that stuff. And before long, this is a really nice spot for a lot of other ships that can start doing the same thing. Last year alone, we saw 172 ships coming through, and this year we're about to see almost 200 ships coming through Seattle, going on those little 70 itineraries. Now, I've also seen a couple of you starting to wave at some of those people over at the Hotel Edgewater there. Keep doing that. Like, that's a really cool thing. They're trying to interact with us, definitely interact with them, and there's a lot more of us when we have out and out pregame up on them. So how Hotel Edgewater here was opened up back in 1962 during the Century 21 Exposition, the World's Fair that we had during that year. This was a big time for innovation. A lot of people were coming through the city. And so during the 6-month-long fair, about 10 million people came through and just enjoy everything that was there to be offered. The problem with the Hotel Edgewater is they were trying so very hard to get open up on time, but due to a bunch of construction delays being built on a pier, it didn't open up until about 2 weeks after the fair ended. Huge missed opportunity. What they decided to do to try to garner interest in the Hotel Edgewater is they started taking out advertisements in hunting and fishing magazines, noting that it's the only location in the world where you'd be able to fish directly out your bedroom window. I don't know if you noticed, but it's right over the water, right over Elliott Bay. Easy access for all those rods going out those windows. Off to the right, you'll also notice we've got that little high-speed catamaran vessel, Victoria Clipper, that red, white, and blue vessel. Can head up to those little areas up in Canada very, very quickly. Little 3-hour trip. If you want to go early on in the morning, just take a boat, head on up there, spend some time over at Bushart Gardens over in Victoria, and you're back in time for supper a little bit later on. Today was the start of their gray whale watching tour. This is the time of year where we've got about 20,000 migratory gray whales that are heading up from Mexico up to Alaska. And so it's a very good time for it. We've got a small group of about 20 of them that make their way to Whidbey Island and feast on all the ghost shrimp that are out there. So definitely a cool opportunity for you there. They only have a couple of different itineraries. I'm not sure if they're sold out, so we have to go take a look at that. As we start making our way towards the end of the central waterfront here, we're going to be having one of the best views of the Space Needle that we're going to have for this tour. So again, my job, photo guy. I want to pull up those cameras. So the least obstructive view that we're going to have here, but I will talk about the Space Needle a little bit later on when we get further out into the bay. There's a lot of really neat stuff along this way. Just below it, you'll notice one of many, many parks that we have here in Seattle. We'll know this as the Olympic Sculpture Park. This is an extension of the Seattle Art Museum, opened up back in 2007. Now, this is one of those free parks. You can definitely mosey on through there, get all of your nice photos of all that stuff. One thing you'll also notice, there's a train heading through the center right now. Now, they've designed that park to allow you to walk through that park and have a lot of that noise kind of canceled out. They've got both of those gray concrete walls that are sitting inside of there, so any of that noise that's coming off that train, well, those people are completely blissful and unaware that it's even going through, so pretty nice thing there. Now again, lots of different parks inside of Seattle. You might have been walking around downtown and noticed that there's little areas that might be like a quarter of a block or an eighth of a block, just little slivers of land through the city, little parks, and those are all in place. That's a good majority of them by a lady named Merle Edwards. Merle Edwards was affectionately known as the Park Lady because she wanted all these unused spaces in the city turned into public parks. So what did we do after she passed away back in the 60s? Well, we dedicated this park directly off to our right into her memory. So this is Myrtle Edwards Park, all these people that are biking, walking, jogging. They're heading through this little area. In fact, this whole park stretches 1.25 miles down, connects to Centennial Park, and if you wanted to, you could go from one of those northerly neighborhoods like Magnolia or Queen Anne and head all the way downtown without stepping foot on a road, which makes for an absolutely beautiful commute. One of the newest attractions that it's going to be having is actually that big giant globe that's sitting up on top of that blue window building. That right there is the logo for the Seattle Post and Televisor, one of Seattle's oldest running newspapers. Last week marked the 6-year anniversary of them closing their operations from their printing side. So it's going to be up to them to kind of refurbish it. They estimate it's going to take about $200,000 to $300,000 to fully restore that globe to its former glory. It illuminates during the nighttime, and it rotates on a pedestal. So they're going to be putting that almost directly off our right here, right in the park. So if you come back through here in the area, well, it's going to have a new home. Now coming up from the downtown area, you're going to see one of many hillsides that we have here in Seattle. This is known as Queen Anne Hill, which got its start after one of the biggest disasters in Seattle's history. In fact, this fire that started was so great, they called it the Great Seattle Fire of 1889. Go figure. Now this fire started out a little bit downtown, or a little bit south of downtown, where you got on this boat today, over in Pioneer Square. Now, to kind of go back, a lot of things were made out of wood in Seattle's very early history. We had our seawall, we also had a lot of the buildings in the area. And so when this fire erupted inside of a cabinet maker's workshop, it spread to the floor below. Cabinet maker's workshop, lots of wood, lots of accelerants, things like that on the floor. And so that fire spread over to the adjacent building, which was home to a liquor store. Now that erupted and went to all those wooden buildings around the area. And before long, Seattle was up in flames. In fact, over a 24-hour period, they had about 25 blocks of downtown Seattle burned to a crisp. So in the big wake of all this disaster, there started being a lot of people moving to the area, population doubling from about 20,000 to 40,000, and started moving to some of these outlying neighborhoods because, let's face it, downtown was becoming a very, very rough and tumble place. To give you a little bit more of an idea, they had a bunch of ladies that were on some of the street corners that referred to themselves as 24-hour seamstresses. And Kelly, your mind wander around about that, but not a family-friendly place. So it started happening in some of these areas like West Seattle and some of the ones all around the area, including Queen Anne Hill. Now, that's going to be a kind of a familiar spot to a lot of you if you are a fan of a lot of pop culture, different references and stuff. Up there is where the show Frasier would have been located if it were actually filmed here in Seattle. It's not done down in LA, but some of the viewpoints from up there, you'll get that traditional view of the Space Needle in front of the skyline and have the Mount Rainier all in the same shot. Yeah, you'll get that from up there. And in fact, if you make your way up to Cary Park, that's where you're going to get that traditional viewpoint. It's just a big giant barge, and it's got a lot of these chutes that are dropping down into the hold of the ship. This is a grain barge, which means it's carrying cattle-grade grain like soy and corn. And all it comes out from the Midwest, makes its way by rail, loaded up into those 68 silos that you see along the shore, and up a conveyor belt, dropped right in the hold of the ship. So it's not big, bulky, like dog food bags of grain. It's all loosely loaded in there. So that can make it very, very difficult for them to load that inside there, make it all even. So it can take weeks and weeks for a ship like this to get loaded up. Not the ocean. We are considerably far from the ocean right now. In fact, if we wanted to get out there right now, what we would have to do, and do the same thing that these grain barges are doing, is we would have to head out to the right side, or the starboard side of the vessel, out towards the Olympic Mountain Range, down towards Anchorage Island, that big landmass out there. Be out in the middle of Puget Sound. Make our way about 70 miles to the north until we got to the Strait of Wanda. We'd take a sharp look down that, and then and only that would be out on the Pacific Ocean. So really 140 miles away from the ocean. Intercoastal. That's why it's so very as we're going through here, we're not rocking back and forth in our boat. We're very, very protected from all the islands that we have out there. It's about 292 islands that we have out in the Puget Sound, all left in the wake of a really large glacier that we had about 20,000 years ago. The Cachan Glacier, as it was known, pulled out of this area and receded. It scoured this earth right below us. So this water that we're in right now is about 400 feet of water. Off to the right, out in Puget Sound, that happens to be one of the deepest occurring inland bodies of water in the entire world. It's many spots 600 feet. Now, we're trying to wrap your head around exactly how deep that is. Looking back at our downtown city skyline, our Space Needle is 605 feet tall. Meaning if you were able to rip that out of the ground and drop it out at certain points of that water, over on the right-hand side of the vessel, all you see is a little flagpole sticking up out of the top. Now, about 10 miles north of here, I think it's to be almost 1,000 feet deep. And again, nice little point of reference. I don't know if it's coincidence or not. The Century 21 Exposition Tower. Or more commonly known to you as the Space Needle. The Century 21 Exposition Tower was its original name because it was designed for the Century 21 Exposition, otherwise known as that World's Fair that we talked about a little bit earlier. The same one that the Hotel Edgewater was built for, remember that? Okay, this one actually got built on time. And back in 1962, they had designed this building to kind of reflect what the buildings of the 21st century were going to look like. That whole fair was about a look into the future. And so the architect that was designing this building got a little influence from the Stuttgart Tower over in Germany and scrawled this out on a napkin. And that's where the Space Needle kind of came into play. The name itself came from a reporter who was just kind of taking a jab at the architecture. They just said it looked like a spaceship had landed on a pair of knitting needles. A Space Needle. And that's where it is right there. And so the name kind of stuck. And so that's where it is today. Now it's there. I'm sure a few of you have already been over there already, but there's a lot of really cool things inside inside that little area that are definitely worth checking out. That's where the Pacific Science Center is. You can kind of see those little white arches near the base of the tower. That has a fantastic butterfly room where they import about 600 different butterflies from the Central America, bring them in there, and they actually fly around and they'll land on you. It's a really, really neat spot. There's also the Chihuly Garden in class. Gail Chihuly is a resident of Tacoma, Washington. He has this very, very influential style of glass. If you've not gone in there, you'll definitely see his stuff throughout the city. There's a lot of places want to have something that's from him. Definitely look at that. And actually, this is going to be a nice little Photoshop too. You got one of these Crowley tugboats kind of right underneath the Space Needle there. It's like almost like Seattle in a nutshell right there. Columbia Tower, which is again under 1,000 feet. Now, it took them a while to get to the height that it is right now, because back in the 1980s, we had a big boom in Seattle. A bunch of buildings being built all at the same time. They're, for the most part, most of the buildings were right around 50 stories tall. Now, there was a little provision in the law saying that if you have retail access at the street level for your building, well, you get a couple bonuses on your building. You can build your building a little bit taller. Now, being built on a slope site, you know, Seattle is built on a very hilly city. They thought about this and said, hey, well, what happens if we put retail access on the higher elevation on the east side of the building? And we also put some on the lower elevation on the west side, some over on the other side. Well, that was a little bit difficult. They were able to bump up their bringing that building up to 76 stories. So that was pretty awesome. But they ran into a problem because that 76-story building would bring them over 1,000 feet tall. Now, why is that a problem? Well, here in Seattle, we've got a couple flight patterns that go over the top of the city. We've got SeaTac Airport as well as Boeing Field to the south. And again, lots of airplanes fly over the city. So the FAA, hearing about this building that was going to be over 1,000 feet tall, they said, no way, you are not going to make this happen. But instead of doing that, we have this sky cap at 1,000 feet. So just pop up a couple floors of the building, and you'll be okay. Well, the story goes that the people designing this building had already pre-leased or otherwise sold every floor of the building to hire to build it, and didn't want to lose out on all that revenue. And so that is where they had to get really crafty, and they decided, after all of this, they just knocked down every single floor by about 6 inches. And that would bring the entire building below the 1,000-foot sky cap, allowing them to keep all 76 floors, and allow them to keep all that revenue that they've been promised. After a lot of finagling through a lot of loopholes and all sorts of stuff, they got one of the shortest 76-story buildings you'll ever see in your entire life. So, pretty cool thing. In fact, this last Sunday had its annual big climb, where about 6,000 residents of the area will go up about 1,300 steps to make their way up near the top of that, and they do that to raise money for research for leukemia and lymphoma. And that, in conjunction with a fundraiser that they did earlier this month with firefighters doing the same thing, they've raised over $2 million for that cause this year alone. So, really neat thing that they do there at that building. This is also where some of the first white settlers of the area came through and started building their little settlement. It was the Arthur Denny Party. They came here from Cherry Grove, Illinois with about 24 strong, landed out there, and absolutely hated it. The winter that they came in was one of the worst on record, and they thought about immediately turning tail and running. They said, this is a terrible, terrible place, let's just get out of here. Chief Seattle started talking to them and said, hey, you don't have to leave altogether. Down in the southeast end of the bay, there's a lot better access to fresh water. And there's also, get this, it's pretty protected from all that inclement weather out there. So guess what they did? They moved down to the southeast end of the bay, and seeing where all the buildings are today, they made a good choice. Now, we kind of already touched on the water here in Seattle a little bit, just this whole little area in here. This is a very, very good spot for a lot of fish to start coming through here. I already pointed out we have a good freshwater access point very close to here, and that's going to be the Duwamish River. Duwamish River, where that meets all this salt water, that's called brackish water. It's salt water, and that's a good spot for a lot of salmon to come move in and out, back and forth very frequently. Now, with all the salmon that are coming through the area, it brings in orcas, it brings in humpbacks, it brings in all sorts of different animals into the area. And one of those particular kinds are known as California sea lions. And we actually are coming up across some California sea lions right now, so if you do want to see some animals, that's about time to kind of get up out of your seat a little bit and start making your way over to the left-hand side of the vessel, because it looks like right now we've got about, I'd say probably about half a dozen California sea lions on top of that buoy, and there's another 3 or 4 that are kind of swimming around and having a good time in the air. So Yeah, if you're having trouble here, it's going to come into view for a lot of you on the board or left-hand side of the vessel. You're very, very trouble. There's a big bar that says Pacific on the side, and there's a nice line that connects right into that little buoy. Now, before I get to the sea lines, I'll talk about the barge, because I'm sure that's what everybody wants to hear about. Right here is basically temporary storage for a lot of these barges. So I can't really tell you what's inside of a lot of these because they change out so quickly. They'll just sit here until a tugboat can come out and take them to where they need to go. Oftentimes up to areas like Alaska and things like that. But California sea lions, I know everybody wants to hear about those. So these, again, are California sea lions. And when I woke up this morning, I was inside of Washington State. So what on earth happened? Well, these California sea lions, just to let you know, I'm just gonna get it out of the way right now, these are all the losers of the bunch. These are the ones that kind of got kicked off the shores of California this last summertime. What they're doing up here is they are coming up and they're feasting on all of our seafood cuisine, all the salmon that I already mentioned before. They're trying to get big and fat and strong and tough, eating all of that fat and protein and kind of beefing up. And on top of those buoys, they kind of practice against one another, kind of scuffling amongst one another. It shows their dominance. You can see one of them hopped up there right now. Now, so basically, once they get all done and all big and fat and strong, and they will head back down to California here in the next couple of weeks, and they will go down there and they will fight against the males that are already down there. The biggest and baddest one around will get a big stretch of beach all to themselves, and all the ladies that come with it. So that is the prize for it. The odds are absolutely not in their favor, as only 10% of male California sea lions ever become beach masters themselves. So it's kind of a hard knock life for them. Now again, you've got all those ones that are up on top. You can see a lot of them are propping themselves up. This is one way that you can tell that these are different from harbor seals. Now, one of those new Washington State ferries is actually in view right now. That's the Samish. That's the one that's going to be in operation later on this year. We saw pretty much the entire process for this. Them building the keel of the vessel, them shipping in the superstructure, or the white and green portion of that. They shipped that out from Anacortes, brought that out here. We saw the entire process of them assembling those two halves. So really cool stuff that they've been doing out here. Now these vessels, as they start traveling through the water, just like any other vehicle, they do need to get fuel every once in a while to keep on going. And one of the spots that it can do that is this little dock that has the Global Pilot barge next to it. That's called Rainier or Maxim Petroleum, and that's just a little gas station for the boats in the area. So all the little tugboats and all of the Washington State ferries and even this boat, the Spirit of Seattle, will go to that dock and get fuel. Now we can do that because we're small vessels and it makes it very, very easy. Here in a moment I'll point out some of the barges that are used for the bigger ships and kind of how all that works. But over here off to the right as well, we've got this kind of black and green vessel, and it's got all these black arches and a bunch of containers on top. That is actually a rail barge. So not only do they have all of that stuff up on top, they have a bunch of little train cars on there as well. So there are railroad tracks on that barge. They'll get loaded up with all of that, and a tugboat with a lot of long lines will pull this barge all the way up to different parts of Alaska. These little rural areas that are really hard to get to, and they'll unload all that stuff. So we'll match up with some more railroad tracks up in those areas. Train will pull up and pull all of those cars off of that barge. So the important thing about heading up to Alaska from here is the fact that going from one U.S. state to another U.S. state, they get to cut past the Canadian border. So it's a lot less expensive to do it that way than to go by land. Now again, There's really big vessels in the area. They've got a lot bigger fish to fry than to go to a separate dock to get fueled up. So again, we bring the fuel to them. And we do that using these really big black barges over here. These are some more of those bunker barges that we kind of already talked about. Lots of diesel fuel, lots of petroleum products. A tugboat will attach to these, pull it up beside a really large ship, like the cruise ships, the container ships, as well as the grain ships that you already saw out there, and they will connect a bunch of pipes to it and do a ship-to-ship transfer of all that fuel and other petroleum products. Makes for a very, very efficient system. So you got to imagine, a lot of these really big container ships that you're seeing over on the side of our ships here, they spend about $40,000 a day to be here. So again, time is money. They want to get in and out as fast as possible. Now right now we're dipping into the eastern waterway of the Duwamish River. And if I haven't already nerded out over a couple of things, this is the area where I really started to nerd out. This is some of the best stuff that we have along the way. But to kind of, again, get you acquainted with the area a little bit, Harbor Island, this big landmass off to the right, is completely and absolutely unnatural. This was not here much more than 100 years ago. In Seattle's very early days, this was a big mud flat. This is where the Duwamish River was coming through, and it had a bunch of crisscrossing little channels going through. What the Army Corps of Engineers did back in the early 1900s was they came out here and they dredged up two waterways. The eastern waterway, which we already passed by, and this waterway that you're in right now. They made these deeper so these bigger and bigger ships could start going up and down these channels. So they straightened out the two channels, dug all that out, and took all that fill soil and started piling it into the center of the river, forming a 400-acre man-made island. When this was constructed, or completed, back in 1909, this was the largest man-made island in the world. Then they started building some in California, we made this one bigger, took the title back, and then eventually we had that for a while. Today, it still currently ranks about 4th or 5th, behind the Palms in Dubai, as well as Kobe in Japan. The Palms, that's one that's the palm tree. Yeah. So we're behind those guys. All right, I guess that's a new game. Somebody just screamed at us, we can scream back at them. No. Anyway, so that's Harbor Island. And the reason that it's here, again, is for all this industry and trade here in Seattle. Again, we got these big looming cranes. They look like, again, they might be from Star Wars. I guess there's a trend today or something. There's a white one that you're not going to be able to see right away, but it is a high-endurance Hamilton class cutter, basically a law enforcement vessel patrolling the U.S. coastline, just kind of busting people along the way. Closest to us here are 3 red-hulled vessels with yellow on them. These are all icebreakers. So these are what the U.S. Coast Guard sends off to Antarctica as well as the Arctic regions. They'll clear shipping lanes and do search and rescue missions. The number 10, Polar Star, this one closest to us, just got back into town last week from a 101-day deployment down to Antarctica during Operation Deep Freeze 2015. They were just doing a resupply mission down there, making sure all that scientific base had everything they needed, all of its provisions and so forth. And immediately after that, they were on their way back home, and guess what? They got a little distress call. There was a fishing vessel that was caught in 15-foot pack ice and had been sitting out there for about 2 weeks. The Polar Star was sent out there to try to clear that path and allow them access through. So they were able to rescue about 26 fishermen that way. Hey, we got another waiver. Let's get them real good this time. Oh, blowing kisses too. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So that right there, this is a container ship. I don't know how close you've ever been to one of these, but this is some serious cool stuff that goes on here. All those retail goods that you get in the store comes by these things. These will come in from different parts of the world. They'll pull into the ports of call, and they will unload all those retail goods. So your iPods and your cell phones, your Xboxes, all that stuff will get kind of shipped around all over the place inside boxes like these. Now, right now, this is not moving back and forth. They're not currently loading or offloading. You can tell because, well, that crane is at a 45-degree angle. If they were in motion right now, it'd be completely horizontal over the water. So, unfortunately, they're not moving right now. But when they are, those gantry crane operators are sliding back and forth in a little glass box, looking between their legs, about 17 stories off the ground, and moving a 26-ton swinging piece of metal back and forth from a ship to a truck behind it, which is pretty serious business, considering they usually have to move one container every 60 to 90 seconds to stay on schedule. Pretty important stuff. Now we've got a couple of our sports stadiums in view as well. We've got that nice charcoal color dome off in the distance. That's home to one team and one team alone, and that's the Seattle Mariners. The Seattle Mariners do play in that stadium. Last season was especially rough for me because I went to about 20 games and I was like really, really amped. They missed the playoffs by a single game last year. Single game. It was the most heartbreaking thing ever. This year, they did pick up Nelson Cruz, home run hero, and so they're going to be doing pretty well when they start and resume their season in 2 weeks from now. Now that stadium is unique from many others in that it does have a retractable roof, which allows them to open and close that in about 15 minutes. It's kind of jokingly referred to as Seattle's midlife crisis because it's a convertible and it's really expensive. Now the other sports stadium with the white arches on it, that's CenturyLink Field, home to 2 sports teams. One of those is the most attended soccer team in the United States, the Seattle Sounders. Seattle Sounders average attendance is 43,000 fans a game, which doesn't sound like a whole lot. You know, baseball and a lot of the other sports will have 60 or 80,000 fans inside of there. But soccer inside of the United States overall is not terribly popular. But here in Seattle, during a very important game, let's say we go against the Portland Timbers, one of our biggest rivals, that stadium will fill up to about 63,000 fans. So along the west coast of the United States, soccer, pretty big deal. One other team that plays inside of there, it's probably a little bit more well known. They have won a Super Bowl before. That was the Seattle Seahawks. So that was Super Bowl 48. I would talk about Super Bowl 49, but I'll pass. Just skip that altogether. I know, it still stings, so that's why I have to joke about it. Inside that stadium, again, it's one of the loudest outdoor stadiums in the entire world. It had a world record very momentarily as the loudest outdoor stadium in the world with 136 decibels, give or take a little bit there. Kansas City Chiefs have been our big contenders for that title. They recently picked up the title for 142 decibels inside of there for all the crowd noise that's being generated. One thing that we are doing though is we're putting in 1,000 more seats inside that stadium. So hopefully this year, those extra 1,000 people kind of edge us out of the competition. Now, coming back down to the skyline one last time, I waited out on this building because it was a little bit harder to see from a distance. But there's that little white tower off on the right-hand side. It's 42 stories tall, gets skinnier in the center, and has a pyramid up on top. That right there is Seattle's first skyscraper. Aww. It's a cutie, isn't it? That building right there was nothing to be joking around about back in the time of its construction. When that was finished in 1914, that was the 4th tallest building in the world outside of New York, and it remained the tallest building on the west coast of the United States until 1962, when the Space Needle was built. So that had a long reign as a giant. Generally speaking, you can go up to the observation deck, but unfortunately, it recently got purchased, the entire building, so they're renovating the elevators, so you won't be able to get up there this time. So it's giving you another reason to come back to Seattle here in the future, and I really hope you do. As you've noticed, we've kind of made our final turn here, heading back into Pier 57. And not only do I talk on this microphone, but I'm also responsible for tying up the boats. And Captain Aaron hates it when I forget to do that. So I'm going to go do that right now. And I thank you all for coming out with me today. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and or your time here in Seattle.
Yes, next round of applause for Andrew.
We're going on the Great Wheel. Okay, I get a little glass box all to myself. That's a bit disturbing. Should get a really good view of Seattle. I think I'm about 3 or 4 stories now above the ground. And as you can see, it's a really good view. There's the aquarium. I might go there tomorrow. Although I've been to a couple of aquariums on my last holidays. Well, it's part of the City Pass book, so I may as well go and have a look at it. Might be able to see my hotel from up here. Sad thing is, this is the last week of my holiday. I've got 2 more nights here, 3 in Vancouver, 2 in San Francisco, then I'm heading home. But Vancouver should be really good, and I've got a ticket for Alcatraz and San Fran. Here we have the Stars and Stripes, and each one of those stars represents the 50 states of America. And I've been to about maybe 13 or 14 of them by now, maybe 15. Alright. I'm going back up again. I don't know what's more fascinating, the view of the mountains or a view of the skyline. I wonder how many times you're going to go around again. Hopefully at least once more. Okay, let's have a look at these clouds that are coming in. Could get a lot of rain tonight. There you go, there's a great shot. That'll make a lovely backdrop to your desktop and your computer. This is probably the last rotation we're doing on the wheel. Then I better head back to my hotel. Hey man, how's it doing? Well, I decided to get Subway for dinner tonight. I'm heading back to the hotel. So from Seattle, Washington. Yeah, you know what I'm going to say. I'm going to say it anyway. Good night and God bless. I will see you real soon.